My daughter died in a car accident. When the lawyer called me, I had a surprise. $8 million inheritance and the company in your name. But I decided to let my greedy son-in-law believe he was going to inherit everything. 3 days later, what he did left me in shock. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. The phone rang at 2:47 a.m. I know because I stared at that red digital clock for what felt like hours afterward, watching the numbers change while my world crumbled around me. At 63, you learn to dread late-night calls. Nothing good ever comes after midnight. Mrs. Patterson, this is Officer Martinez with the State Police. I'm calling about your daughter, Emma Patterson Williams. My heart stopped. Emma was supposed to be driving back from her business conference in Portland. She'd called me around 8, her voice bright with excitement about landing a new client for her interior design firm. I'll be home by midnight, Mom. Marcus is making his famous lasagna for tomorrow's dinner. There's been an accident, ma'am. The rest of the conversation became a blur of medical terms and procedures. Highway 101, tractor trailer, rainy conditions. But the words that cut through everything else were, I'm sorry for your loss. Emma was gone. I sat in my kitchen until dawn, staring at the half-finished crossword puzzle we'd been working on together the previous Sunday. Her neat handwriting filled in forever for 7 across. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus arrived around 7, his eyes red but his voice strangely controlled. Ruth, I can't believe this happened. Emma was everything to me. He pulled me into a hug that felt mechanical, rehearsed. Something about it bothered me, but grief has a way of making you question everything. The next few days passed in a haze of funeral arrangements. That's when I first noticed Marcus's strange behavior. While I sat numbly in the funeral director's office, he was on his phone, whispering about assets and timelines. When I asked him about it, he squeezed my shoulder and said, Don't worry about anything, Ruth. I'm handling all the business stuff. Emma would want me to take care of you. But Emma had always been fiercely independent. She'd built her design company from nothing, working 16-hour days to prove herself in a competitive field. The idea that she'd want Marcus, who worked sporadically as a freelance photographer, to handle her business felt wrong. The funeral was beautiful. Emma's office team came, her college friends, neighbors we'd known for years. I watched Marcus work the room like he was networking at a business event rather than grieving his wife. He kept mentioning moving forward and new chapters. When Mrs. Henderson from next door offered to help me sort through Emma's things, Marcus quickly interrupted. That won't be necessary. I'll take care of Ruth and everything else. Everything else. The phrase echoed in my mind. 3 days after we buried my daughter, Emma's lawyer, Mr. Garrett, called and asked me to come to his office. There are some matters regarding Emma's estate that we need to discuss, Mrs. Patterson. It's important we handle this promptly. I told Marcus about the appointment, expecting him to offer to drive me. Instead, he said, You know what, Ruth? I think I should be there too. As Emma's husband, I need to understand the legal situation. The confidence in his voice struck me as odd. Emma had always handled their finances. Marcus had even joked about being mathematically challenged whenever bills came up. Mr. Garrett's office smelled like leather and old books. Marcus sat beside me, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. This is just a formality, he whispered to me. Emma and I discussed everything. She wanted to make sure I could take care of you. Mr. Garrett adjusted his glasses and opened a thick file. Mrs. Patterson, I need to speak with you privately about Emma's will. Marcus straightened in his chair. Actually, as her husband, I think I should hear whatever concerns Emma's estate. The lawyer's expression remained neutral. I understand, Mr. Williams, but Mrs. Patterson is the primary beneficiary. I need to discuss certain details with her first. Primary beneficiary. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Marcus's face went pale. What do you mean, primary beneficiary? Emma and I were married. Everything should go to me automatically. Mr. Garrett looked at me, then back at Marcus. Mr. Williams, your wife made very specific arrangements. Perhaps it would be best if Mrs. Patterson and I spoke alone first. I watched Marcus's jaw tighten. For just a moment, his carefully constructed grief mask slipped, and I saw something else underneath, something calculating and cold. Of course, he said, forcing a smile. I'll wait outside. Ruth, take your time. Once he left, Mr. Garrett leaned forward. Mrs. Patterson, your daughter left very clear instructions. She's left you her entire estate, the business, her savings, investments, life insurance, and the house. We're talking about approximately $7 million in total assets. The room started spinning. $7 million. Emma's business had been successful, but I'd had no idea about the extent of her wealth. She also left detailed instructions about her husband. Mr. Garrett continued. Emma was concerned about certain financial behaviors. She wanted to ensure you were protected. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus's reaction in the lawyer's office, the way his face had changed when he heard primary beneficiary. Emma had always been careful with money, but she'd also been private about her finances. Even with Marcus. What had she discovered? What had she seen that made her bypass her own husband in her will? As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell Marcus about the inheritance immediately. Something was wrong, and I needed to understand what my daughter had known before she died. I decided to let Marcus believe what he wanted to believe while I figured out what Emma had known. It wasn't difficult. He never asked directly about the will's contents, seemingly confident that everything would fall into his lap eventually. The first red flag appeared 2 days after the lawyer meeting. I was at Emma's house, going through her clothes with shaking hands, when I heard Marcus on the phone in her home office. Yeah, I know it's been less than a week, but I need to move fast, he was saying. The transition period is critical for maintaining client relationships. I crept closer to the doorway, my heart pounding. Look, Sarah, I appreciate your loyalty to Emma, but I'm in charge now. We need to restructure the team. Some of these senior designers are making too much money for what they bring to the table. Sarah Chen had been Emma's right hand for 5 years. Emma always spoke about how brilliant Sarah was, how she'd helped build the company's reputation for high-end residential projects. I don't care what Emma promised about profit sharing, Marcus continued. Things are different now. We need to trim the fat and maximize efficiency. Trim the fat. He was talking about firing Emma's team before my daughter was even cold in the ground. When he emerged from the office 20 minutes later, he found me folding Emma's sweaters. How are you holding up, Ruth? His voice was gentle again, concerned. I'm managing. Was that work calling? He sighed heavily. Yeah, unfortunately. Emma's clients are worried about continuity. I'm trying to keep everything stable, but it's overwhelming. Emma handled so much. Maybe Sarah could help. Emma always said she was incredibly capable. Marcus's expression flickered for just a second. Sarah's great, but she doesn't have the business acumen for leadership decisions. Don't worry, though. I'll figure it out. That evening, I called Sarah myself. Emma had given me her number years ago, and we'd chatted at company holiday parties. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry for your loss, Sarah said, her voice thick with genuine grief. Emma was more than a boss to me. She was a mentor, a friend. Thank you, dear. I was wondering. How are things at the office? There was a long pause. Honestly, it's been confusing. Marcus called a meeting today and announced some major changes. He's bringing in his own people for key positions and, well, several of us are being let go. My stomach dropped. Let go? He says the company needs a new direction. But Mrs. Patterson, Emma's business was thriving. We had a waiting list of clients. Some of these contracts took years to develop. After we hung up, I sat in my living room, staring at the framed photo of Emma's college graduation. She'd been so proud when she started her business, so determined to build something meaningful. The thought of Marcus dismantling it piece by piece made me sick, but I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. I needed to understand more. The next morning, I drove to Emma's house under the pretense of collecting more personal items. Marcus was already there, standing in the driveway, talking to a man I didn't recognize. Ruth. Perfect timing, Marcus called out. This is Dave Morrison. He's a business consultant who's going to help me modernize Emma's company. Dave shook my hand with the enthusiasm of a used car salesman. So sorry for your loss, Mrs. Patterson. Marcus tells me you're being very supportive during this transition. Transition? As if Emma's death was just a corporate restructuring. I'm just trying to help however I can, I said carefully. That's wonderful. Marcus is really forward-thinking about scaling the business. There's a lot of potential for growth if we streamline operations. After Dave left, Marcus invited me inside for coffee. Emma's house still smelled like her vanilla candles, still held traces of her presence in every room. Marcus seemed oblivious to it all, spreading business papers across her dining room table like he was planning a renovation rather than dismantling her life's work. "You know, Ruth, I've been thinking about our situation," he said, pouring coffee into Emma's favorite mugs. "This house is pretty big for one person. Have you considered moving in here? We could help each other through this difficult time." The suggestion caught me off guard. "That's thoughtful, Marcus, but I'm comfortable in my own home." Of course. I just hate the idea of you being alone. Emma always worried about you." Emma had never expressed concerns about me living alone. If anything, she'd often commented on how independent and self-sufficient I was. "And honestly," Marcus continued, "it would help me too, managing the business and dealing with grief. It's a lot. Having family close by would be comforting." Family. He'd never called me family before Emma died. That afternoon, I found an excuse to visit Emma's office. The building was a converted warehouse in the Arts District, filled with natural light and creative energy. Emma had always loved working there. The receptionist, a young woman named Lily, looked up with red-rimmed eyes. "Mrs. Patterson, oh, it's so good to see you." "Hello, dear. I hope you don't mind me stopping by." "Of course not. Emma talked about you all the time. She was so proud of you." As we chatted, I learned more about the changes Marcus was implementing. He'd already canceled 3 major contracts, claiming they weren't profitable enough. He'd fired the head of procurement and replaced Emma's carefully selected suppliers with cheaper alternatives. "The whole vibe has changed," Lily whispered, glancing around nervously. "Yesterday, Marcus brought in some guy who's never worked in design before and gave him Sarah's office. Sarah's been here since the beginning. When I got home that evening, I found Marcus's car in my driveway. He was sitting on my front porch, holding a bottle of wine. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by," he said. "I was in the neighborhood and thought we could have dinner together. Emma always said you made the best pot roast." I hadn't made pot roast in months, but I didn't correct him. Over dinner, Marcus talked about his vision for Emma's company. He spoke with the confidence of someone who'd built the business himself, not someone who'd married into it. Emma was talented, but she was too sentimental about business decisions, he said, cutting his roast. She kept people on payroll out of loyalty rather than performance. "I'm taking a more practical approach. Emma seemed to have good instincts about people," I said carefully. "She did in some ways, but she was too trusting. Take that contract with the Peterson family. Emma agreed to a payment schedule that was way too generous. I'm restructuring it to protect our interests." The Peterson family had been Emma's first major clients. She'd often told me how they'd taken a chance on her when she was just starting out, how grateful she was for their faith in her abilities. After Marcus left, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea, trying to process everything I'd learned. Emma's business wasn't just being changed, it was being gutted. Every decision she'd made, every relationship she'd built, every value she'd stood for was being discarded in favor of maximum profit. But what disturbed me most was how comfortable Marcus seemed in his new role. This wasn't a grieving husband trying to honor his wife's legacy. This was someone who'd been waiting for an opportunity. I thought about Mr. Garrett's words. Emma was concerned about certain financial behaviors. What had Emma discovered about Marcus? And more importantly, how long had she known? 2 weeks after Emma's funeral, Marcus arrived at my house with a briefcase and that practiced smile I was beginning to recognize. He'd called that morning saying he needed my help with some temporary paperwork to keep the business running smoothly. "Ruth, I hate to burden you with this," he said, settling into my kitchen chair like he belonged there. "But there are some legal technicalities with the business accounts. Since Emma didn't have a chance to update certain documents after we married, I need you to sign some temporary authorizations." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. The letterhead looked official, but something about his nervous energy made me suspicious. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked, reaching for my reading glasses. "Oh, just standard stuff. Banking authorizations, continuity agreements, nothing major." Mr. Garrett said it was all routine. Marcus's fingers drummed against the table. "The important thing is we get this handled quickly so the business doesn't suffer." I studied the first document. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out. Transfer of operational authority, dissolution of previous arrangements, irrevocable designation. "Marcus, this seems quite complicated for temporary paperwork." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "I know it looks overwhelming." That's why I had my lawyer simplify everything into standard forms. Emma would want us to protect what she built, right? His lawyer, not Mr. Garrett, who had handled Emma's affairs for years. I think I'd like to have Mr. Garrett review these first, I said, setting the papers aside. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course, if that makes you more comfortable, though we might lose some momentum with clients if we delay too long. After he left, I called Mr. Garrett immediately. Mrs. Patterson, I'm glad you called, he said when I described the documents. I haven't reviewed any paperwork for Mr. Williams, and I certainly didn't recommend any temporary authorizations. Can you bring those documents to my office? That afternoon, Mr. Garrett spread Marcus's papers across his conference table, his expression growing darker with each page. Mrs. Patterson, these documents would essentially transfer control of Emma's entire estate to your son-in-law. The language about temporary authorization is misleading. Once signed, these would be very difficult to reverse. My hands began to shake. So he was trying to trick me? It appears so, and Mrs. Patterson, there's something else you should know. I've been conducting some research into Mr. Williams's financial history, as Emma requested before her death. He pulled out another file, this one much thicker. Your daughter came to see me 6 months ago. She was concerned about some irregularities she'd discovered. It seems Mr. Williams had accumulated significant gambling debts, approximately $180,000 worth. The room felt like it was spinning. Gambling debts? Online poker, sports betting, casino visits. Emma had started noticing unexplained charges on their credit cards. When she confronted him, he claimed they were business expenses for client entertainment. I thought about all the times Marcus had mentioned networking events and client dinners. How naive I'd been. There's more, Mr. Garrett continued. Emma hired a private investigator. She discovered that Mr. Williams had been having an affair for over a year with a woman named Jessica Torres. They'd been seen together at casinos in Atlantic City. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Emma had been dealing with all of this alone while I'd been completely oblivious. Why didn't she tell me? I whispered. She was protecting you, Mrs. Patterson. Emma knew how much you loved Marcus, how happy you were about their marriage. She wanted to handle the situation quietly, possibly through divorce proceedings. Divorce proceedings. Emma had been planning to leave Marcus. She changed her will immediately after discovering the affair, Mr. Garrett explained. Emma wanted to ensure that if anything happened to her, you would be protected and her life's work wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. That evening, I sat in Emma's bedroom, surrounded by her personal belongings, trying to process everything I'd learned. In her nightstand drawer, I found a small leather journal tucked behind some old photographs. My hands trembled as I opened it. Emma's handwriting filled the pages, neat, careful notes documenting her discoveries about Marcus. March 15th. Found another $3,000 charge to Atlantic Gaming Resort on the Visa. Marcus claims it was a client retreat. Called the resort. No business events that weekend. April 2nd. Discovered Marcus has been accessing the business account without permission. $15,000 transferred to an account I don't recognize. April 18th. Hired Patricia Myers, private investigator. Need to know the truth. May 10th. Patricia confirmed it. Marcus has been seeing Jessica Torres for 14 months. They've been to casinos together at least 6 times. She works as a dealer at one of the places he frequents. May 22nd. Confronted Marcus about the affair. He denied everything. Said Patricia was lying. But I saw the photos. I saw the credit card receipts. When I threatened to expose him, he became angry. Angrier than I've ever seen him. For a moment, I was actually afraid. June 3rd. Changed my will today. Marcus can never know about the extent of the business's success. If something happens to me, Mom will be protected. She's the only family I have left who actually loves me for who I am, not what I can provide. I closed the journal, tears streaming down my face. Emma had been so alone, so frightened, and she'd been protecting me even from her own pain. The next morning, Marcus called. Ruth, did you have a chance to review those papers with Mr. Garrett? We're still looking them over, I said, keeping my voice steady. I see. Well, I hate to rush you, but there's another issue. Emma's business partner in Portland wants to dissolve their joint venture. I need to respond by Friday, or we could lose a significant contract. Emma didn't have a business partner in Portland. I'd helped her with her taxes for years. I knew her business structure intimately. Which partner is that, Marcus? A brief pause. Oh, you probably don't know him. It's a newer arrangement Emma set up last year. Very technical stuff. More lies, delivered with the same confident smile. I'll try to expedite the review, I said. That would be great. And Ruth, I hope you know how grateful I am for your support during this difficult time. Emma was lucky to have such a caring mother. After I hung up, I realized Marcus was escalating his timeline. Something had him worried, and I suspected it wasn't just impatience. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I drove to the office and asked to see Emma's computer files. Lily let me into Emma's office, and what I found there confirmed my worst fears. Emma's email history showed months of correspondence with divorce attorneys. She'd been building a case against Marcus, documenting his financial misconduct and preparing to leave him. But more disturbing were the emails from the weeks before her death. Marcus had been pressuring her to make him a full partner in the business, to put his name on all the accounts. Emma had refused. Their last email exchange, just 3 days before the accident, was chilling. Marcus, you're being unreasonable. I'm your husband. We should share everything. Emma, marriage doesn't mean you own me or my business. I've worked too hard to let you destroy what I've built. Marcus, you'll regret this attitude, Emma. You can't control me forever. Emma, I don't want to control you, Marcus. I want you out of my life. I stared at that final message for a long time. Emma had been planning to file for divorce the week she died. She'd been preparing to expose Marcus's gambling, his affairs, his attempts to steal from her business. And now Marcus thought he was about to inherit everything she'd worked for. But Emma had outmaneuvered him one last time. She'd made sure I inherited everything, and she'd left me the evidence I needed to understand why. The question now was, what was I going to do with that knowledge? 3 weeks after discovering Emma's journal, I was still processing the depth of Marcus's betrayal when he showed up at my door with a woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than Emma, maybe 35, with bleached blonde hair and expensive jewelry that seemed out of place for a Tuesday afternoon. Ruth, I'd like you to meet Jessica, Marcus said, his arm casually draped around her waist. We've been supporting each other through this difficult time. Jessica Torres, the woman Emma had discovered Marcus was cheating with. The woman whose affair had destroyed my daughter's marriage and broken her heart in her final months. It's so nice to finally meet you, Jessica said, extending a manicured hand. Marcus has told me so much about you. I'm sorry for your loss. Marcus says Emma was a wonderful person. I stood there speechless, watching this woman speak about my daughter as if she hadn't helped destroy her life. Marcus watched my reaction carefully, and I realized this wasn't a casual introduction. This was a test. Thank you, I managed, shaking her hand briefly. That's very kind. Jessica has been such a comfort to me, Marcus continued. She understands loss. She lost her father recently, too. The comparison made my stomach turn. Emma wasn't just lost. She was dead, and these two had been betraying her while she was alive. We were hoping to take you to dinner, Jessica added sweetly. Marcus says you make wonderful pot roast, but we thought we should treat you for once. You've been through so much. I looked at Marcus, remembering Emma's final email. I want you out of my life. Instead, here he was, installing his mistress in Emma's place and expecting me to welcome her with open arms. That's thoughtful, but I have plans tonight, I lied. Maybe another time then, Marcus said. Actually, that reminds me, Jessica has some wonderful ideas about the house. She has an eye for interior design, like Emma did, as if my daughter's talent and training were equivalent to this woman's eye. The space has so much potential, Jessica chimed in, looking around my modest living room. With the right updates, it could be really stunning. They stayed for an hour, with Jessica offering unsolicited opinions about my furniture and Marcus nodding along as if her thoughts mattered. When they finally left, Jessica hugged me goodbye like we were old friends. I hope we can spend more time together, she said. Marcus and I are planning to do some traveling once things settle down with the business. Traveling, with Emma's money, on Emma's dime. The next morning, Sarah Chen called me in tears. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I didn't know who else to turn to. Marcus fired me yesterday. He fired you? But you've been with Emma for 5 years. He said the company was going in a new direction and my services were no longer needed. But Mrs. Patterson, he's hiring Jessica Torres to take my position. She has no design experience at all. She was working as a casino dealer before this. My blood ran cold. Marcus wasn't just flaunting his affair. He was systematically replacing Emma's carefully chosen team with his own people. There's something else, Sarah continued. Marcus announced that the company is moving to new offices. He's selling the warehouse space Emma loved and moving everything to a generic office building across town. He says it's more cost-effective. Emma had specifically chosen that warehouse space. She'd spent months renovating it, creating an environment that inspired creativity and collaboration. It was as much a part of her vision as any of her designs. And Mrs. Patterson, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I overheard Marcus talking to Jessica about you yesterday. He was saying something about how you're getting older and might need help managing finances. Jessica suggested that maybe you should consider selling your house and moving somewhere more manageable. The pieces clicked into place. Marcus wasn't just trying to take control of Emma's business. He was planning to control me too, and Jessica was helping him strategize. That afternoon, I drove to Emma's house, knowing Marcus would be at the office. I needed to search for anything I might have missed, any additional evidence of what Emma had discovered. In her home office, behind a row of design books, I found a manila envelope marked, "For Mom in case of emergency." Inside were photocopies of all the evidence Emma had gathered, bank statements showing Marcus's gambling losses, credit card receipts from his casino trips with Jessica, photos from the private investigator, and a letter addressed to me. Dear Mom, if you're reading this, something has happened to me, and Marcus is probably trying to convince you he should inherit everything. Don't trust him. He's been stealing from the business for months, and he's been having an affair with a woman named Jessica Torres. I know this will be shocking and painful to read. I wanted to tell you everything, but I didn't want to burden you with my problems. You've always been so proud of my marriage, so happy that I'd found someone who loved me. I couldn't bear to shatter that illusion while I was still figuring out what to do. Marcus doesn't know about the extent of my assets or the true value of the business. I've been careful to keep that information private. If he knew we were worth over $7 million, his behavior would be even worse. I've left everything to you because you're the only person I trust completely. You've never asked me for anything, never made me feel like I owed you something in return for your love. Marcus is the opposite. Everything with him is transactional. Please don't let him manipulate you with guilt or false promises. He's dangerous when he doesn't get what he wants. I've seen that side of him, and it frightened me. Use the money to take care of yourself. Travel. Buy that beach house you always dreamed about. Spoil yourself for once. You've spent your whole life taking care of other people. It's your turn now. And if you decide to do something with the business, please remember that it represents everything I believed in. Honest work, beautiful spaces, and treating people with respect. Don't let Marcus turn it into something ugly. I love you more than words can express. You taught me everything important I know about integrity, kindness, and strength. I hope I made you proud. All my love, Emma. I sat in Emma's chair, clutching her letter, finally understanding the full scope of what she'd been dealing with. She'd been protecting not just her business and her assets, but me. She'd known Marcus would come after me next. That evening, Marcus called to invite me to dinner again. Jessica is cooking tonight. She makes this amazing salmon dish. Why don't you join us at the house? The house. He was already calling Emma's house the house, as if it belonged to him. I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not feeling well tonight. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, Ruth, Jessica and I have been talking, and we're concerned about you living alone. At your age, it might be time to consider some help with daily tasks. At my age, I was 63, not 93. I'm managing fine, Marcus. Of course you are, but wouldn't it be nice to have less responsibility? Jessica found this lovely assisted living community not far from here, very upscale. Lots of activities. We could arrange a tour if you're interested. I felt the trap closing around me. First, he'd tried to get me to sign over Emma's assets. Now he was trying to get me declared incompetent so he could control everything. That's not necessary, I said firmly. Well, think about it. Emma would want you to be taken care of properly. After hanging up, I realized Marcus had made a critical error. He'd revealed his timeline and his strategy. He was moving fast because he was desperate, and desperation made people careless. Emma had given me everything I needed to stop him. The question was whether I had the courage to use it. Looking at my daughter's photo on the mantel, I knew what I had to do. Emma had trusted me with her legacy, and I wouldn't let her down. Marcus thought he was playing chess with a confused old woman. He was about to discover he'd been playing with someone who had nothing left to lose and every reason to fight. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Friday at Mr. Garrett's office. Marcus had called me 3 days earlier, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. Ruth, I've got great news. My lawyer has worked out all the estate complications. We can finally get everything transferred properly so the business can move forward. His lawyer again, not Mr. Garrett, who actually handled Emma's will. We just need to meet at Mr. Garrett's office to make it official, Marcus continued. It's really just a formality at this point, but the courts require your presence since you're listed as a temporary beneficiary. Temporary beneficiary. The lies came so easily to him now. Of course, I said. I'll be there. Perfect. And Ruth, bring any documentation you might have. Bank statements, insurance papers, anything related to Emma's accounts. We want to make sure we don't miss anything in the transfer. He wanted me to bring documentation so he could see exactly what he was inheriting. The greed in his voice was barely concealed. That morning I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one Emma had bought me for her college graduation. I arrived at Mr. Garrett's office 15 minutes early and found Marcus already there, sitting in the waiting area with a briefcase and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ruth, you look wonderful, ready to get this all sorted out, as ready as I'll ever be. Marcus had brought his lawyer, a thin man named Robert Kellerman, who looked like he specialized in quick deals rather than careful legal work. Mr. Garrett greeted us all professionally, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes when he looked at Kellerman. We settled into the conference room, Marcus and his lawyer on one side of the table, Mr. Garrett and me on the other. Marcus opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. I think we can make this quick and painless, Kellerman said, spreading documents across the table. We've prepared all the necessary transfer documents. Mrs. Patterson just needs to sign here, here, and here. He pointed to signature lines on papers I hadn't even been given time to read. What exactly am I signing? I asked. Marcus leaned forward, his voice gentle but condescending. Just standard transfer documents, Ruth. Nothing complicated. We're moving Emma's assets into my name so I can properly manage everything. I see. And what do I receive in this arrangement? Marcus and Kellerman exchanged glances. Well, you'll be taken care of course, Marcus said. I've arranged for a trust that will cover your living expenses. Very generous terms. How generous? Another glance between them. $2,000 a month, Kellerman said. More than enough for your needs. $2,000 a month, out of a $7 million estate. That does seem generous, I said carefully. Could I see the actual will first? I'd like to understand what Emma wanted. Marcus's jaw tightened slightly. Ruth, we've been over this. The will is just a starting point. These documents reflect the legal reality of how estates are actually handled. Mr. Garrett cleared his throat. Actually, I think Mrs. Patterson should see the will before signing anything. He pulled out a file from his briefcase. This is Emma's last will and testament, properly witnessed and filed. Kellerman started to object, but Mr. Garrett was already handing me the document. I made a show of reading it carefully, even though I'd already reviewed it multiple times. Marcus drummed his fingers on the table, his confidence beginning to waver. This is interesting, I said slowly. According to this document, Emma left everything to me, not to Marcus. That's just a technicality, Marcus said quickly. Emma didn't understand the legal implications. As her husband, I'm the natural heir. But she specifically states that her husband receives nothing except his personal belongings. The room went silent. Marcus's face had gone pale. There must be a mistake, he said, reaching for the will. Emma would never. We discussed this. She wanted me to take care of you. When did you discuss this, Marcus? I asked quietly. Well, not in so many words, but she always said, because according to Mr. Garrett, Emma changed her will 6 months ago, around the time she discovered your gambling debts. Marcus went rigid. What gambling debts? I opened my purse and pulled out copies of the documents Emma had left for me. These gambling debts, $180,000 worth, Atlantic Gaming Resort, Borgata Casino, various online poker sites. Kellerman was frantically shuffling through his papers, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. And then there's the matter of Jessica Torres, I continued, placing the private investigator's photos on the table. Your girlfriend of 14 months. Marcus stared at the photos like they were toxic. Ruth, I can explain. Can you explain this? I set down printouts of the business account transfers. Or how about this? More bank statements showing unauthorized withdrawals. Emma knew everything, Marcus. She knew about the gambling, the affair, the money you stole from her business. That's why she changed her will. Marcus shot up from his chair, his careful composure finally cracking. This is ridiculous. Emma was my wife. I have rights. You had rights, Mr. Garrett said calmly. But you forfeited them when you committed adultery and theft. I never stole anything. I pulled out Emma's business account statements, the ones showing Marcus's unauthorized transfers. $15,000 here, $8,000 there, $25,000 to pay gambling debts, all without Emma's knowledge. Marcus's lawyer was now studying the documents with growing alarm. Mr. Williams, you didn't mention any of this. Because it's all lies. Marcus's voice was rising. Ruth is a confused old woman being manipulated by this lawyer. Actually, Mr. Garrett said, Mrs. Patterson asked me to prepare something for you. He slid a document across the table to Marcus. This is a cease and desist order. You are no longer authorized to make any decisions regarding Emma's business. You are also banned from the premises and all business accounts. Marcus grabbed the paper, his hands shaking. You can't do this. I already have. As of this morning, the locks have been changed on the office and Emma's house. Security has been notified that you are not welcome. That's my house. I live there. Actually, I said quietly, it was never your house. Emma owned it before you married, and it was never put in joint names. You have 24 hours to collect your personal belongings. Marcus turned to me, his eyes wild. Ruth, you don't understand what you're doing. I loved Emma. No, Marcus. You loved what Emma could give you. There's a difference. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact moment when his mask finally fell away completely. The charming, grieving widower disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating. You'll regret this, he said quietly. Both of you. Are you threatening my client? Mr. Garrett asked. Marcus seemed to realize what he'd said. He straightened his tie, picked up his briefcase, and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he turned back. Emma would be ashamed of you, Ruth, ashamed of how you're dishonoring her memory. After he left, I sat in the quiet conference room, my hands trembling slightly. Mr. Garrett poured me a glass of water. Are you all right, Mrs. Patterson? I thought about Emma's letter, about her fear of Marcus's reaction when he didn't get his way. I thought about her courage in protecting me even from beyond the grave. I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. For the first time since Emma died, I felt like I could breathe again. Marcus's reign of manipulation was over. But as I would soon discover, men like Marcus don't give up easily. And sometimes their final desperate acts reveal just how dangerous they can be. 6 months after that confrontation in Mr. Garrett's office, I stood in the renovated warehouse space that had once housed Emma's design firm. The afternoon light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the workstations where her carefully chosen team had returned to create beautiful spaces for grateful clients. Sarah Chen approached me with a cup of coffee, her smile genuine and warm. The Martinez project is ahead of schedule, and the client wants to discuss expanding to their vacation home in Monterey. That's wonderful news. I accepted the coffee gratefully. Emma always said the Martinezes had excellent taste. It had taken 4 months to rebuild what Marcus had torn down in just 3 weeks. Some clients had been lost, confused by Marcus's chaotic changes and sudden personnel shifts, but most had remained loyal to Emma's vision once they understood what had really happened. The hardest part had been letting go of my need for justice. Marcus had disappeared from our lives as quickly as he'd tried to insert himself into Emma's legacy. Jessica Torres had apparently moved on to her next target. Mr. Garrett's investigator had spotted her with a recently divorced real estate developer in Miami. I'd considered pursuing criminal charges for the money Marcus had stolen, but Mr. Garrett advised that the legal costs would likely exceed any recovery. Sometimes, he'd said, the best revenge is simply living well. So that's what I chose to do. Emma's business was thriving again. I'd hired Sarah as the new managing director, and together we'd expanded the team to include 2 junior designers Emma had been mentoring before her death. The office buzzed with the same creative energy Emma had fostered, the same collaborative spirit she'd valued. But the business was only part of Emma's legacy. I walked to my desk, Emma's old desk, which I'd moved to a corner office overlooking the design floor. On it sat a framed photo of Emma at her college graduation, radiant with possibility and determination. Next to it was a letter I'd received just that morning. Dear Mrs. Patterson, My name is Jennifer Walsh, and I'm writing to thank you for the scholarship that allowed me to complete my interior design degree. I know this program was created in Emma's memory, and I wanted you to know how much it means to students like me who couldn't otherwise afford to pursue their dreams. Your daughter's story has inspired me to focus on sustainable design and ethical business practices. I hope to one day create something as meaningful as what she built. With gratitude, Jennifer. The Emma Patterson Memorial Scholarship had been my idea, but Sarah had helped me implement it. We provided full tuition and mentorship for 2 design students each year, focusing on those who showed Emma's combination of talent and integrity. Mrs. Patterson? Lily, our receptionist, appeared in my doorway. There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal. I looked up to find a woman in her early 40s standing nervously in the doorway. She had Emma's eyes and my late husband's chin, features I recognized but couldn't place. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. My name is Patricia Myers. I was the private investigator Emma hired. Patricia, the woman who had uncovered Marcus's lies and helped Emma prepare for the battle she'd never lived to fight. Please come in, sit down. Patricia perched on the edge of the chair across from my desk, clutching a manila envelope. I debated whether to reach out, but there's something Emma asked me to give you if anything happened to her. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a letter in Emma's handwriting and a small velvet jewelry box. Mom. If Patricia is giving you this, it means my worst fears came true, and I didn't get the chance to handle Marcus myself. I hope by now you understand why I made the choices I did. The box contains Grandma Sarah's engagement ring, the one Dad gave you when you were 22. I had it reset with the diamonds from my wedding ring after I decided to leave Marcus. I couldn't stand looking at that ring anymore, knowing what it represented, but I couldn't bear to throw away the diamonds either. I wanted you to have something beautiful from something broken, a reminder that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, but real love, like yours, endures everything. I hope you'll wear it and remember that you taught me everything important about courage, dignity, and standing up for what's right. You raised me to be strong enough to walk away from people who don't deserve me. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you about Marcus while I was alive. I was so ashamed that I'd been fooled by him, so disappointed in my own judgment. But mostly, I was afraid you'd blame yourself for not seeing what he really was. You couldn't have known, Mom. Marcus was very good at being what people needed him to be. That's what made him dangerous. Live your life fully, travel to those places you always talked about visiting, buy art that makes you happy, spend money on experiences that bring you joy. You've earned every bit of happiness that comes your way. All my love always, Emma. I opened the jewelry box with trembling fingers. Inside was the most beautiful ring I'd ever seen, my mother's diamonds arranged in a vintage setting that somehow captured both elegance and strength. She had it made just 2 weeks before the accident, Patricia said softly. She was planning to give it to you for your birthday. I slipped the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, a beautiful space in a converted historic building downtown, walking distance from Emma's office. I'd sold my old house 6 months ago, not because Marcus had suggested it, but because I wanted a fresh start in a place that held no memories of him. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and I thought about the choices we make and the legacies we leave. Marcus had chosen greed and deception. Emma had chosen love and protection. I had chosen to honor her choice by living the life she'd wanted me to have. My phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Helen, a retired librarian who'd become a dear friend. Wine and cheese at my place? I have gossip about the new couple in 4B. I smiled and texted back, "Be right there." As I stood to go inside, I caught my reflection in the glass door. The woman looking back at me was different from the one who'd received that devastating phone call 6 months ago. This woman stood straighter, smiled more easily, wore a ring that represented resilience rather than loss. Emma had been right about so many things. Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting someone from the truth until they're strong enough to handle it. Sometimes it's letting go of people who don't deserve us, and sometimes it's simply choosing to live fully in honor of those we've lost. I touched Emma's ring, feeling the weight of her love and trust. Marcus had tried to steal her legacy, But he'd failed to understand what that legacy really was. It wasn't money or property or business success. Emma's true legacy was the strength she'd passed to me, the courage to stand up for what's right, the wisdom to recognize what truly matters, and the grace to build something beautiful from something broken. I locked the door behind me and walked down the hall to Helen's apartment, ready for wine and gossip and the simple pleasure of friendship. Tomorrow I would return to Emma's office, continue her work, mentor young designers, and live the life she'd fought to protect. But tonight, I was simply Ruth Patterson, a woman who had learned that love is the only inheritance that truly matters and the only legacy worth leaving behind. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.